Liz and Esther, are you all set if we get started?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. We're so excited to have you today. We're going to be talking about the ongoing transfer of wealth from baby boomers to Gen Z and millennials, how this phenomenon of the great wealth transfer is likely to impact long-term care planning. And just kind of a housekeeping note, we want this to be kind of conversational, get you all involved. So we're going to have just a few slides kind of level setting and contextualizing the problem. And then towards the end, we'll have more formal time for discussion, if that sounds good for everyone. So just to start out with some brief introductions, my name's Tierney. I'm joined by Liz Christofer and Esther Greenhouse. Liz and I are both from HCG Secure, which is a product development insurance company, primarily serving middle-income retirees and their brokers and financial advisors. And we have a particular focus on offering and creating products that are coupled with tools and planning resources to help people prepare for long-term care expenses, both on a budget and ahead of time before it becomes a problem. And Esther, I'll let you introduce Silver to Gold and yourself.
Thanks, Tierney. Hi, I'm Esther Greenhouse. I'm CEO of Silver to Gold Strategic Consulting. We work with financial planning and long-term care insurance firms to provide fractional gerontology services, professional trainings, and client engagement in order to build relationships with heirs, retain more assets, reduce claims, and all of this by enabling clients to reduce preventable long-term care needs.
So just to kind of level set and define what we're talking about when we say the great wealth transfer, it's expected that there's going to be $84 trillion in intergenerational wealth going from baby boomers to Gen Z and millennials by 2045. So that comes out to about $320,000 per person as the average inheritance. And a big part of the problem that we're going to be talking about today is very few families and individuals have started having conversations about this transfer of wealth. And I think that's somewhere where agents and advisors can really play a role both in encouraging those conversations and making them more inclusive with the entire family. Oops, sorry. So in terms of kind of your role in all of this, client retention is a really big part of it. We have kind of the data showing that both women and children, upon big life events, often leave financial advisors shortly after that kind of money is transferred. And with the great wealth transfer, $30 trillion in wealth is going to be going to women, which is a greater share of wealth than women have ever held in the market before. So kind of with that, Esther, I actually wanted to talk to you a little bit about what the role of agents is with kind of maintaining client retention and what are some of those crucial components missing from those financial conversations and planning conversations now.
Yeah, this is a huge issue, and a lot of people are seeing this as a windfall. But what's crucial to recognize is that some key things are missing. So one, of course, is long-term and short-term care insurance. But in addition, it's critical that where the client lives is a significant variable in the planning process. And what I like to say is that the problem and solution are different sides of the same coin. So the problem side is that clients and their advisors don't understand how the status quo of where we live actually contributes to preventable age-related decline and dependency. And then the other side of the coin is that that's also the solution. So no matter what age you're working with a client, thinking about the role of their home environment, whether it's a private home or it's, for example, a senior living community. How will it enable them to maintain their physical and financial independence as they age?
That kind of ties in to what I think we're going to talk about next too, with also really accounting for kind of family dynamics. And while you might now be engaging more with one member of a family, it's typically like the husband or the father, a male figure within that family. I think it's really important, especially with that great transfer of wealth to women and to children about to happen, to make sure that you're engaging more kind of intergenerationally and engaging with the whole family. And a big kind of another big data point to kind of consider for that is that I believe it's 80% of women die widowed, whereas 80% of men die married. So I think kind of just trying to think long term about your book of business and really engaging with the full family is going to be beneficial for them, of course, in managing that money as it's coming in, but also beneficial for you in kind of building those relationships that are going to last in more meaningful ways.
So I find this really exciting because there's so much potential for helping people. And one thing that I'm curious for you, Tierney and Liz, how might advisors better engage with the younger generations, especially on topics like long-term care, aging, when many young people have yet to consider or might not even want to consider these topics?
Yeah, I think it's such like a big issue. So kind of like you were saying, there's not going to be like a one size fits all solution, but I think that there's also a lot of opportunities to apply kind of different changes in different areas of your business. So one that Liz and I were actually just talking with one of our broker partners with is even trying to hire kind of younger advisors, people who might be able to have more relatable or kind of same place in life type conversations with younger family members as they're inheriting wealth. That can be a great way to like help maintain and build those relationships. In terms of like marketing tactics, I think there's a lot of opportunity to engage more with different types of social media. Your older clients might be more active on maybe Facebook or LinkedIn, but engaging more with Instagram or TikTok might help kind of build relatability and understanding as they're trying to manage money in a way that's maybe new for some of those younger clients.
The other thing I think that's nice too, we're starting to see more employers start offering things called caregiver benefits. So I think as individuals, as they enter the workforce and they start to see some of these voluntary benefits that are available to them, things such as new kind of long-term care products that are even entering the work site. Those are things that will start to get on their radar. It will start and help educating them. But as families are going through and doing the planning process as well, I don't think it's too soon to get some individuals involved. And especially if there is a current caregiving situation going on in the family, whereas it's just not the parents, right, participating, maybe taking care of a grandparent or an elderly relative. Maybe you get some of that younger generation involved so they can understand what's going on and be a part of the solution with it and really help them feel that they add value to the situation.
I interviewed some financial planners. I conducted some insights interviews, and one of them shared with me that when he works with families, he actually requests that beginning at age 13, family members start participating in the conversation to develop these long-term relationships, but also to educate every member of the family before it's urgently needed.
That's a really great segue, I think, into Liz. I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about the long-term care piece.
Absolutely. Thank you. And well, good afternoon, everyone, officially. If you take one thing away from today, we all hope that you understand long-term care is expensive and you need to plan for it. Those should be your bullet points that you take away from today. But you'll hear us kind of interject some humor into some of this because it's needed throughout some of these difficult conversations. But all kidding aside, when you start to look at some of these numbers, right, with costs ranging from $60,000 to $120,000 a year, depending on the location and the acuity, right? What is the level of care that's needed? You can really start to see that how quickly that average, what we're thinking of as that anticipated inheritance, right, of $320,000, how quickly that could really start to dwindle for people. And I think consistently what we have seen is that people often overestimate their own health status and their own health state with how healthy they believe that they are. And in turn, while they're doing that, they also underestimate how much long-term care really costs. And as we start to see, even though long-term care really can be the single greatest expense to derail a retirement, it's often the most overlooked component in the planning process, which is really interesting. And as Tierney had highlighted, as you start to get into this great wealth transfer, you're going to start to see that women really are at the center of this discussion. So as Tierney highlighted, women will be in control of more money than ever before. And also, they're going to be the ones that are going to be most impacted by long-term care. Because if you think of women in this dynamic, really it's twofold, right? They are often the unpaid caregivers for family members and loved ones. But at the same time, from a longevity perspective, they're the ones on average living longer than males and the ones that will most likely need that type of care. So for agents and for advisors, I think it's more important than ever that as you start to look at how this great wealth transfer is starting to manifest itself, women are a critical component of that and need to be at the center of the discussion.
I think
Liz, can I ask you a follow-up related to this? So this makes me think of that how family caregiving is often considered a free or unpaid option for extended care. So how can advisors and families start to consider these unseen costs of caregiving as part of a financial plan?
Absolutely. And Tierney, the next slide may help that a little bit as well, too, because even if individuals have the funds, what we're seeing right now is there's actually a labor shortage in the caregiver and the home health labor market. So even if you have the ability to fund something, the act of finding quality care and then affording it is really very problematic. So to Esther's point, more and more people now are turning to unpaid caregivers, which is often family members, and they view it as free. But as we know, it's the same thing as someone's not going to, self-insure because you can't insure yourself, you're self-funding it. When you go to do caregiving, right, the caregiving isn't free. Someone is paying for those services. And oftentimes, really, like we say, women end up being the caregivers. And a way that agents and advisors can start to frame this discussion is that most often individuals will identify that if they are in a caregiver situation, almost all of them have had it impact their productivity or their presenteeism at work. So they have either had to reduce their hours, they've had to leverage all of their PTO or their sick days, maybe to drive somebody to doctor's appointments. And unfortunately, oftentimes they have to leave the workforce completely. And so some of the statistics that you start to see is that women on average, when they leave the workforce for a caregiving event, lose $300,000 in earned income. And so, Esther, to get back to your point, like that doesn't sound very free when you start to see, right, what really an individual does have to sacrifice in order to be a caregiver for a family member. And then what we have seen, Tierney and I, we did some research on this, which we'll highlight it a little bit too. It becomes a generational problem then, because then the individual that left the workforce to care for somebody who now has $300,000 less in their own retirement fund to fund their own needs later in life. Now they're going to become even more dependent and reliant on their own children. And that cycle just continues. And it really results in some families going into a financial spiral. And so I think that's the thing for agents and advisors to keep in mind is that they list it as a family member, as an unpaid caregiver. You look at that lost income, but on average, any caregiver, even if it didn't disrupt their work, on average, they spend $7,000 out of pocket to help care for someone. So that could be, again, gas driving to and from appointments, picking up supplies, right, running errands, picking up things at the store for them. all of that has a price to it. And I think when you are doing a needs assessment or retirement planning for individuals, you need to take all of that into account. And what we start to see is with the shortage of caregivers that we're starting to see, that those that are actually paid caregivers, they're scarce and they are getting more scarce, and most likely it's going to become an even more dire situation, so that when you do find someone, they will be even that much more expensive, right? So individuals really are going to need additional, and they're going to require other care options to really start to help alleviate some of this emotional and financial burden that family members carry when they're caring for a loved one.
I think it's also like alongside the care options too, just it's a really good time to be thinking about kind of more middle ground insurance options. Just with the future of kind of federal funding for Medicaid a little bit up in the air right now, trying to understand what products you can offer clients that might have been kind of planning on a Medicaid spend down for their long-term care needs. Like the option shouldn't really be just kind of traditional or hybrid plans for long-term care or Medicaid spend down. We need some more middle ground options to help people be prepared for those costs.
And Tierney, I'm going to thank you for that one, because it's probably the perfect segue then into this slide, and really what is at the heart of HCG Secure, right? Our mission is to design these extended care products to enable families to help alleviate that burden, and so that individuals have that ability to plan and be able to age with confidence. And that's what we're shooting for, right? Like, as we start to go through this, I think you're going to start to see some common things, that we want individuals to have choice. We want them to have independence. We want them to have dignity. And that's regardless of what socioeconomic level that they are in. But it's this middle income bracket that we're seeing are the ones that are really getting, I think, crunched the most, right? They don't have enough money or make enough money to self-fund their own care. And as Tierney had highlighted, they make too much to maybe qualify for Medicaid. And as those rules are starting to change a little bit, that Medicaid spend down is going to get even more difficult. So when we think of middle income Americans, the range is really pretty broad. Like Fidelity Investments actually defines it as individuals that have between $500,000 and $2 million in assets, including the value of their home. That's a pretty big range. And as Tierney had highlighted, you need a variety of products to be able to fill that gap, depending on where someone lands on that continuum. And that's really what we're doing at HCG Secure. We have a portfolio of products that range from final expense to short-term, up to a whole life that's a hybrid that has accelerated benefits for terminal illness and chronic condition. And the idea around all of our products has a very similar theme, right? First and foremost, we want our products to be simple. So as agents and advisors, you can easily explain these products to your clients, but most importantly, your clients are going to understand the products and understand exactly what they're paying for and what their coverage is. Secondly, we want them to be flexible, right? So whether it's final expense or short-term or a whole life with accelerated benefits, we want individuals to be able to decide when and how much they accelerate at their time of need. Thirdly, and I think this is probably one of the most important for when you talk about middle income, is accessibility. And because middle income individuals are most likely probably purchasing a little bit later in life, we leverage simplified underwriting because we want to increase accessibility and eligibility. Because the likelihood that someone a little bit older in age has a comorbidity or two when they're trying to apply for a product, that's really important for you to be able to work with them and still be able to provide them solutions that meet their needs. And then finally, with all of this, we want it to be affordable. So if individuals are purchasing a little later in life, we take advantage of entry age pricing, right? All of our products, you lock in at that entry age pricing, and that price remains consistent for the life of the policy. And that gives a lot of individuals price certainty, which is huge for agents and advisors if you're working with individuals to provide them with that price certainty so that they can age with confidence, knowing that they have this covered. And I think the beauty of all of the HCG Secure products is they also come with a curated set of support and advocacy services. And our belief behind this is, while the integrated components of the insurance coverage can provide individuals with the financial security to cover these costs, we want to work with individuals and their families in advance of their time of need so they have some critical plans in place, right? They can make a checklist or an aging at home plan, because we like to tease all the time. Individuals, they have an idea of where they're going to age, but they may not have shared that with the rest of the family, especially if they plan on moving in with somebody. So it's always good to have those conversations in advance, so it's not a surprise to anybody. And the really important thing is getting some of those documents in place early, such as wills, advance directives, and medical and legal proxies, right? All of those things are important to have. And if you can get them in place in advance of the time of need, it really helps families focus on what the important decisions are, and then not making decisions, knee-jerk reactions to things because they have to make a quick decision because they're scrambling trying to find the information that they need. So again, really working with individuals on a holistic level so that they have a plan, and then when it comes to their time of need, they can just execute on that plan.
We saw some of this. Liz and I conducted research a few years ago of family caregivers, adult children caring for parents mostly, and we were able to do some one-on-one follow-up interviews with those individuals. And I think this is just kind of really representative of a lot of what we saw, people just feeling kind of overlooked and underserved, both by kind of the caregiving system and also insurance options available. So this is one example. Marvin was in his 40s. He was kind of really pursuing his career at the time when he became a family caregiver, and felt this incredible kind of financial stress covering extra rent, cable, utilities, while also trying to provide some of that physical support and care. So I think this is where, kind of to Liz's point, speaking about the HCG products, they're really designed to target that market that maybe hasn't felt like they've had insurance options for this type of coverage in the past. And like Liz mentioned, those non-insurance benefits are available to the family members too. So for a client who maybe isn't close to needing that care themselves yet, but maybe they're dealing with this with a parent and really having a hard time, if they were to kind of gain coverage, then they could use those same support services to help them as a caregiver, as well as when they're ultimately likely to need care later in life. And I think from here, we'll kind of turn it over to you, Esther, just to speak a little bit more. As I had mentioned, this is such a huge problem, and you've taken a really interesting perspective, looking more so at the impact of built environment as an investment for successful aging.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tierney. So a lot of the things that you and Liz talked about in terms of generational problems, serving the middle market, planning and preparing in advance. At Silver to Gold, we say that you can't have a comprehensive plan, whether it's a financial plan, a long-term care plan, a legacy plan, unless where the person lives is a major variable. And what I see a lot in insurance as well as financial planning is a focus reflecting consumers' desires to age in place. And survey after survey says that over 90% of older adults want to age in place. And when you look at the statistics, over 90% of adults are aging in place. But the huge disconnect that very few people understand and are addressing is the fact that only 5% of the housing stock is actually designed to support safe and successful aging at home. And sometimes people think, well, a senior living apartment complex or independent living, CCRC, assisted living, must be designed better because they're designed specifically for older adults. And sadly, that's not entirely the case. The photo here is actually from a national chain of senior care facilities, well-respected chain that brings a lot of leadership, but this is not a well-designed solution. So if you design to enable physical independence on the part of the older adult, whether it's in a private home or whether it's in a care facility, you can actually reduce the demand on caregivers. And when we have a national shortage that's growing of care providers, whether it's, again, at home or in a facility, we need to do whatever we can to reduce the need.
And Esther, what do you make of kind of some of those long-term care plans that offer benefits for home modifications?
Well, I have two schools of thought on that. One is that's phenomenal. That's recognizing that there's a real need and providing resources to address it. The issue is we really need to explode this myth and dependency on home modifications, because home modifications typically come too late. They come after a person's abilities have already been artificially reduced by the environment they live in. If they've already contributed to what I call forced frailty, they've contributed to preventable decline. And really the time to enable longevity and enable successful aging in place is before the need occurs, because it's not typically a discrete event caused by your home. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's a fall, but often it's over time that lack of fit between a person and their environment gets worse and worse and contributes to long-term care needs and dependency. So we need to flip the script on this. And lastly, I'll say on home modifications that another huge variable is the fact that people don't want them. People don't want them because they are associated with frailty. So we need to shift and get people to understand that they can actually leverage the features of their home to enable greater independence. So I mentioned in the previous slide, what is successful aging in place? Well, we have to define that. So homes with 5 key features, this is defined by the Harvard Joint Center on Housing Studies. They include a 0-step entry into the home, single floor living, wider halls and doorways, electrical controls that are within reach, and lever handles for faucets and doors. And again, less than 5% of the nation's housing stock has all of these features. So what you want to enable your clients to do is to design for or select for places, home environments, care environments, independent living environments that focus on independence and caregiving, features that enable that. And all of this can be used as an intentional aspect of reducing caregiving needs and costs.
This is a great kind of counterpoint to the modifications piece too. I feel like having design that looks kind of homey and nice rather than having that stigma around it feeling more hospital-like in some ways.
Right, and that's another misconception, that if we're going to design to enable independence when you're aging in place, that it has to look institutional, and it does not.
Craig, you okay?
So I'm going to share something. My most powerful case study actually from my work is actually that when we applied my firm's enabling design approach to my mother's later years. My mother was a middle market client, and she had multiple chronic conditions, but we made sure she had a home that was designed for successful aging in place, that included the features that we listed on earlier slides and beyond. And with that, we delayed her move to a care facility by 7 years. And not only did this enable her to easily have ongoing relationships with the family, and gave her dignity and choice and independence, but it saved the family and the government somewhere between $500,000 to $1.5 million. So we're talking about using something people already have. Everybody has to have a place to live, but using that intentionally in an informed way as a strategic part of reducing long-term care needs and preserving legacy. So I've been hearing a lot in the industries about making predictions in order to inform a plan. And some of the things we're seeing are making plans based on likelihood of needing care at what age, the number of hours of care that will be needed, and who will provide care. What role are family members playing, and how much are you bringing in paid caregivers? But I want to impress upon you that while these plans, these sources of information are crucial to making a good plan, any of these plans are already obsolete if you fail to plan for the variable of where a person lives. Because, for example, if you say, okay, the adult daughter is going to provide care in the evenings for 2 hours a night, and a paid caregiver is going to come in the morning through lunch to provide care. But what if I'm the one receiving care and I can't go up and down stairs and there's no bedroom or bathroom on the first floor? How will I be able to stay in that house? So what's beautiful is when we design to enable independence for the person who might receive care in the future, we also make the provision of care in the home that much easier.
I also think with all of that, kind of the new data and technology available with these predictions, it's easy to get kind of caught up in those weeds when in reality, most of us are going to need some kind of care. So having any kind of plan and just getting that plan in place almost regardless of what that data might tell you is just so important as like a basic step to take.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like wellness approaches, you may be able to prevent or delay any kind of decline or need.
Mm-hmm.
So for Silver to Gold, that's why we're bringing this initiative to our work with firms, and we call it Tackling the Long-Term Care and Caregiving Crisis by Design, because again, it has to be a crucial variable in any kind of plan, and it's often misunderstood or overlooked.
Just kind of to wrap up everything we've talked about, I think kind of the big key takeaways are like client education on these issues is so important. And with that, kind of taking a more comprehensive approach. So whether that's including more of the family in these conversations, building those relationships with different family members, including the home as a key part of environment planning and as a cost saving strategy. And then similarly, kind of incorporating different products into your portfolio that are going to help your middle income clients kind of save money down the line where they might not have been thinking that long-term care type insurance is really a possibility for them.
Great. Thank you all for joining us for this virtual conversation. Like I said, we'll be sending out an email with some resources and tips and links. So we'd love to hear your thoughts about maybe future virtual conversations and any other things that you might not have shared now. And Tierney, I'll turn it over to you to close this out.
Yeah, just kind of to echo what Esther said, thank you everyone for joining. We'll be sending those follow-up materials probably early next week if that works well for everyone. And yeah, we'd love to stay connected. So if people have kind of relevant materials or anything they'd like to share with us going forward, feel free to reach out. Thanks, everyone.